I like how Wirecast tells me like if it's streaming, it's streaming. Zoom, it's like, we're setting it up, we're thinking about it. We don't know what we want to do. We might do it. We might feel like it. Okay, something happened.
Oh, you're live.
Yay, we're live.
We're live.
We're live. Awesome. Well, let's get started. It is the March edition of Bet's Business Book Club, where we are reading Failing Forward by John C. Maxwell. If anyone saw my video from a couple weeks ago when I was super excited about how many flags I put in my book, I lost my book. I lost it in my house, so I have one flag. I didn't want to go back and reread the whole thing. So anyone have any strong feelings, any way, any direction about this book?
Well, I've been a reader of like self-help books for
A long time.
and after a while they all started getting repetitive, and
Yeah.
I kind of found his a little weak in compared to what I've read, but I like the concept of legitimizing mistakes as a learning process.
Yeah, I definitely was very into the book in the beginning, and then it did kind of get repetitive.
Yeah.
I think my favorite thing that he talks about is like reframing your idea of what is a failure versus what is success.
Taking it from one who's been reframing for many years, it's very good advice.
It is very good advice because, and especially easy, I think, with like social media and whatever, to compare yourself unfairly to what's really not even real, right? Like nothing online is real. But it can make you feel like, oh, I'm a failure because I don't have that yacht, I don't have that fancy car, I didn't go on this vacation and do whatever. It's like, but was that important to you? Did you want to do that? Was it a goal?
And it's about reframing the I'm a failure and realizing, oh, that was a failure. It's not directly tied to my self-worth. And I think that's really important too.
That was his number 3, remove you from failure, which I really like that because I often feel like I fail at something, it is my fault, and I am the failure, not something just didn't go right.
I liked that part where he had the T-chart, and it was saying, think of the last time you failed and compare it to which side, and did you fail forward or did you fail backwards? And it was odd because I chose from both sides depending. So I just think it depends on the failure and the emotions attached to it, because sometimes I can let it roll off me and be like, oh, everything's fine, I'm failing forward, and other times not so much. But I do think it was really overall a good book, and I learned a lot and applied it in my life.
One thing I found that I've always used, even before I read the book, as a teacher, students fail all the time. They fail a quiz, they don't get their math homework right. I was teaching fashion design. Kids don't get things to fit them correctly, or they can't thread the sewing machine correctly. And I've always said to them, there really aren't any mistakes. Everything is a learning opportunity. And he really emphasized that. And I've emphasized that too, because like I like to crochet. I know Bet crochets, I taught her. So I'm sitting there and I made a hat and I'm looking at it. There's a hole in the middle of it. How in the world is there a hole in the middle of this? I'm not taking the entire hat apart to fix this hole. So am I a failure? Well, I failed to make that stitch. I have a hole. Now I'm going to learn how to fix that hole without taking everything apart. And the 5 of us are now sworn to secrecy. That's
the entire internet.
The Secrets Act from the Pentagon.
You know what, though?
Can't tell anybody.
What's neat about that? So yeah, I crochet a lot of stuff. There's actually a term in crocheting, maybe for knitting also, when you screw something up and you have to undo it all. It's called frogging. I don't know where this term comes from, but I see it online all the time. Like, I had to frog this whole thing like 5 times. Are you a failure because you had to restart? No, you got it right eventually, right? So who cares?
Well, sometimes it doesn't really matter. It makes it look like it was made by a human and not a computer, not a robot, you know?
Yeah.
I always look, oh, okay, well, it shows that it was handmade. All right. As long as I can fix it and I don't hear, Safa, there's a hole in my hat, you know, I'm okay.
Bob Ross is good at failing forward if you watch his videos. Happy trees. Oh,
Happy trees, right? You take your mistake, right? You take your mistake and you turn it into a positive, which I think he also talked like find the benefit in every bad experience, right? There's got to be something good somewhere. Like if nothing else, you have a bad experience, you have a good story.
So like, how does this apply to business?
How does it apply to business? Well, so my motto this year, and it was announced to the world. I was on a podcast for the Sticky Brand Lab. I said, my motto this year is make different mistakes, right? Which is basically like keep failing over and over and over again. Because you have to learn from a bad experience and make it a good experience, right? Like we've been having a lot of audio issues all year with our various and assorted shows. But each time is a different problem. Like we kind of tweak stuff and try again. And it's like, oh, something still didn't work, but it was a different mistake. It was a different problem. We don't scrap the whole program because it's a failure. I'm not like, oh, I can't figure out audio engineering. I'm a failure. It's just like, I'm going to try it again. I'm going to try change something, do something different. Maybe be a little scientific, like change one thing at a time and see if that's what makes it go. And it's the same for any process, right? Any processes should be iterative like that. Like find what breaks, redo, change one thing maybe, and try it again and keep doing it until you get it to where you want it to be. Whatever the process is, life, business, children, restart them.
You also have Alex. Well, he just went off. But you also have Alex to, to help you.
Yeah, he helps. I mean, I think he helps get it like fixed faster, but we still have to screw it up. And I screw it up on my own. Sometimes I fix it on my own. It is helpful, I think, if you have other people around.
And me.
Like Jordan. Furiously texting me when stuff isn't working.
I'm going to ask Jordan for help when I need help from them.
I liked how he talked about like say goodbye to yesterday, or like don't dwell on your past things, because I think that can hold you back so much.
Yeah.
It's like how many of us think about like things that happen to you in middle school or high school. You're like, oh,
I choose not to. I think in that regard, I'm very good at failing forward. Just leave it behind and don't relate to that person. That person is no longer me. And that's kind of how I have to live.
Yeah, evolution, right?
Or you can put it into a humorous kind of thing. Like when I was in college, I had a interior design teacher who told me that I had very cheap taste and I didn't know how to put things together. And so whenever I'm buying something and I look at the price tag and it's well out of my range, I go, oh, see, there's my cheap taste. What can I say? I make a joke out of it. But it really, it stuck, it really has stuck to me. We redid our kitchen quite a few years ago, and I got things that, we had a budget and I had to stay within the budget, but I stretched it as far as I could. And people come in and they go, wow, who was the designer that did your kitchen? I go, well, I did. They go, oh, that must cost you a fortune. Not really, because I have cheap taste. What can I tell you?
Yeah, that actually reminds me of a different book I read. It was something dark chaser, light chaser. I don't know. I'll comment it later. But it was interesting. She talks about taking the things that you hate about yourself or the things that you don't accept about yourself and finding that positive within it. And so if somebody calls you the B word, eventually you learn and you reclaim it and you're like, hell yeah, and I get stuff done, because once you claim it, it can't hurt you.
All right, Alex raised his hand. He has something to say.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to stay muted because I'm kind of outdoors right now.
But that's a cool
but,
background.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the most interesting, early on, everything I did career-wise was pretty straightforward. Like the search engine optimization, you change stuff each month and you saw what was working, but almost all the time things were upward. You'd have the occasional bad month. But as things got broader, you found myself professionally having much wider range of things I had to handle. Like most challenge, one of the things with marketing is it's all very numbers and data driven. Well, what do you do when the data's wrong? And you get in somewhere and you've made all these assumptions based on that. And really, all of a sudden, everything you're doing is wrong. Everything's a mistake. Every project's a failure. And you just have to kind of keep rolling forward and you just keep making new mistakes. Like everything's a debacle. Like all of a sudden ended up doing special events because we got a good deal on sponsoring one of these things. None of us knew how to do events, but we obviously couldn't bring in an event company that would have cost 3 times what the sponsorship cost. So we just kind of figured it out. And the first time we just kind of hired someone we knew. And then the next time we sent out an email and hired from our whole team. And, we were just kind of winging it all the way. And eventually you figured out, okay, well, we all look like we're the wait staff. Okay, let's go fix that. Okay, now we look like we're an actual put together team. And after, 8 or 9 times of just mistake after mistake, or we got to measure this, we didn't bring this, or we brought the wrong thing. Like it's a nightmare. But, over time, you get better and figure it out. But if you just decide after one try, it didn't work, we didn't make our number, then you'll never figure anything out. And that's really where the growth and the opportunity happens. And it only happens through failure, which, this and every other book is kind of consistent on, because, if you only can do things you get right on the first try, you can't do anything.
Yeah. And he talked about that with the Coca-Cola when they came out with the new Coke, and it was this massive $1 million failure, if not more than that. But when they came back with the classic Coca-Cola, everybody went crazy for it, and they made 10 times the amount of money they would have made if they had not made that mistake. So I think that's like kind of sums up what you were saying, Alex.
It's like an engineered failure almost. Like they did it on purpose. It's like that
Yeah.
saying, like, no publicity is bad publicity.
Yeah, exactly. It's like your comeback story. Everybody loves an underdog.
Right?
Like Reese's peanut butter cups. Last year was the last year they were making them. They weren't going to make them anymore. And it was all over the TV. Oh, you better buy it now because they're not going to be gone. And then it was like a we fooled you kind of thing.
I don't remember that.
I had read that their sales were down, so that's what they did to boost their sales.
Right.
Nothing like creating a false market shortage.
Right. And in this world,
Let everyone know now, there will be no more Bet Hotchburger, everybody. After this month, it'll be.
Might not be, I don't know. Depends if they keep moving tax deadlines on me.
It's funny, who really pioneered that false shortage was Nintendo. If you look back in the 80s, if you read, I think the book is, Game Over, maybe, the story of, Nintendo's rise in the 80s, they would absolutely engineer shortages of their hot game because then people would run out. Super Mario Brothers 3 was the pinnacle of this. So they intentionally undershipped it. Everyone ran out that day. It was the hot Christmas gift. And what did you do if you didn't get that? Well, you bought a different Nintendo game. So they were able to move their sales to their less popular, and then everyone bought Super Mario Brothers 3 when it came out anyway. And it was really that kind of pioneering of using a shortage to create demand. And in the world of software, it's totally artificial, right? Like there's no limit to how many times you can copy things. I guess a little bit more with chips, right? Like they had to manufacture them, but it wasn't like they were hand building a world and you had to go and like grow trees or anything. You just clone the chip and it on its way. But you don't run out of these things, but you create the shortage of it, and it created runs on everything. And one of the challenges Nintendo had as everything moved to download is they lost that entire angle of controlling their distribution.
Yeah, because you could just hop on and get whatever. Although they managed, and I don't know if it was engineered or not, with the Switch, like they had the best timing. They put out the Switch, the world shut down. We're all like hunting for a Nintendo Switch. I bought one on OfferUp or something and paid more than retail because we were just like desperate to get them. And couldn't get them to the stores. I don't know if it was real or engineered shortages or what, but it was crazy like a year ago.
Ever own up to that? Are they ever like, yeah, we engineered this, or is it all just like hearsay?
I don't know. At this point, they can just blame COVID. Be like, COVID, couldn't get anything manufactured out of Asia and shipped over to the US. It was a little bit real.
Someone I know doing distribution in Miami is like, their message still says like, oh yes, because of COVID delays. I'm like, nobody believes you. I'm like, go fix. They're like, what do you guess? There isn't a person in the country that believes your Miami company is being impacted by like COVID.
Yeah.
Right.
People are still using that as an.
If you were LA or San Francisco, I'd be like, oh yeah, you've got like 4 people in the warehouse. It's like, it's not working here. So it's like, go fix your system. They're like, all right. So it's like, take the message off, go fix the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like buying yarn at Joann's or Michael's. They're always out of yarn. But if you go to Hobby Lobby, they have so much yarn that you can't decide which one you want. Why? You know?
Too many choices. I think that's a different book. how to position things with the right amount of choices.
Ned and Alex write that book.
Jeez.
Many choices.
A couple other things that I like that he talked about. Change your response to failure by accepting responsibility. Oh, because if it's not your own within your control, or you can't fix it. You can't say like things happened to me. Like, oh, what was me? You know, this happened to me. It's like, but if you have control and you say, okay, this was my doing, like I screwed this up, but I can fix it at the same time.
Claiming your part is what we call it. Claiming your part.
But it's real.
It's real, 100%. That's how you get over resentments. That's how you get over anything negative in life, is seeing your part in it and learning how to move on from there, move forward.
Right, because if you're the victim, there's nothing to fix, right? And then you just kind of keep failing in the same spot. But you know, it's funny every time. Like the event one was, I think, the best learning, and I think Jordan got to see from the opposite side, like us thinking, like acting like we knew what we were doing. But we were brutal when we would get in the room, and it was like, there is no defending. It is everyone bring up the process. People were miserable at the end of like a 45-minute postmortem. But we got so much better so quickly because you own your failure, and it's like, yeah, I did that. I'll fix that next time. And just once you got into the habit of doing that, instead of making excuses, you're able to you're able to go forward. But you can't if you're like, oh, this happened. Like, yeah, bad weather happened. Well, we weren't prepared for it. Where was the tent? Where was the alternative? Where was the backup plan? Where was the rain gear? You know?
To the point where when somebody would start to be like, we did really good, and da-da-da, Alex would be like, no, we didn't. Stop saying those things. Like, it's like, okay, Alex, let them live a little, and he would. But it was just funny because it's true. We can't just give ourselves pats on the back all the time. We have to own our failures, and we have to move forward. Because if we just say, good job, you're so great, oh my gosh, then nothing happens. Nothing gets better. I think that's
from Aaron C to Riptide, how different were things?
Yes.
Very different.
And from one Riptide to the next, I wasn't at Aaron C, but I saw the transformation. I was like, holy cow.
What were they? The giant billboards, the videos. Those were cool.
There was a lot of cool stuff.
I was on a big screen.
It was very cool. So another thing I like in here is says, get over yourself. Everyone else has. And you really can't take yourself so seriously. I mean, maybe if you're like a brain surgeon, maybe like take that seriously, but most of what all of us do is not that serious.
Yeah. It goes back to like.
Okay.
What?
What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say it goes back to like the 4 agreements. Don't take everything so personally. Don't take yourself so seriously. It's just a problem. Like, you're not responsible for the problem, but you are responsible for the solution. So just
I like that.
go with the solution.
I like that. I mean, what I liked actually about this book is it made me see connections to a lot of other stuff that we read before. Like the take action to reduce your fear. That was totally 5-second rule, right? It was, how do you make yourself do it when you can't? You do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, take action. So it kind of ties nicely into what he's saying. There was something else that made me think of another book. Actually, it wasn't a book club book. There's this book I read long ago by Carol Dweck called Mindset that maybe we should add it to the list. It's a fantastic book. She talks about like having a closed mindset versus open mindset. And if you're able to accept the responsibility on yourself for your failures and change, that is absolutely an open mindset where you're open to growth and open to making mistakes and taking risks and trying things. Whereas if you have a closed mindset, you're like, I'm only going to do what I know I can do, and I'm going to stay safe and comfortable, and there will be no growth, and this is just where I'm going to stay in my little bubble. So it really, I thought it made me think a lot about that particular book.
Yeah, and I think the thing about staying the same and staying in your comfort zone is people assume like nothing's going to change, I'll be safe. And it's like, no, change is inevitable. Failure is inevitable. It's going to happen with or without your action. So do something.
Yeah, evolve or die, because whether or not you change, external factors are going to change. Like COVID. How many people suddenly had to switch to an online business, whereas before they never thought of it or didn't have to, like they didn't have to invest in that technology or learn it or whatever. It was actually great for me because for years and years, I've been a very in the cloud online virtual CPA firm, which in South Florida was highly unusual. If you go out west, California, New York, you'll find it. But down here, it was like crazy. There were so many brick and mortar accountants that when they had to shut everything down, they couldn't operate. And I was like, okay, I'm open. Come to me.
One a good example of that. One of the discussions on Twitter in the Miami tech world that we've all been watching is, someone posted about Clubhouse, and they're like, I just realized I haven't opened Clubhouse since I moved to Miami 3 weeks ago. And all his friends in San Francisco are still on there, and there's like a why, and you see it's dropping off, but it's like, well, what's going on? It's like, well, Clubhouse is living in the world of San Francisco where everyone's still home all the time. Meanwhile, he's in Miami and he's out at the beach and he's on a boat and he's out to dinner and whatever. And he's like, no, he's not sitting at home at 7 o'clock to use an app that requires his full attention. Might throw a podcast in the gym, but certainly isn't hopping on these discussions. And what's interesting is, talking about what do they need to do? Well, if people are back to driving to work, you need it to integrate with CarPlay and Android's thing. You need to be ready for people to do this. There's no computer app. Well, you have your phone. Well, if I'm at home, sure, I can throw my phone on the desk. But if I'm at the office, I can't have my AirPods connected to my phone and not be able to access my computer. So if it's one or the other, so all of a sudden it's like not prepared for the change because, and you watch like Clubhouse numbers have plummeted and they don't know why. And part of it is as other areas don't look like them, or people that have moved here and they're like, what do you mean I can't just rely on Yelp? That'll tell me everything about a restaurant. It's like, nobody here's ever used Yelp. Those are all fake reviews. Like, what are you going to
I was talking to somebody earlier today about moving to Florida, and I gave the example when we moved to Florida 14 years ago from Boston. That was such a high-tech city, like
17.
Cosmo.com or whatever. 17 years, whatever. I can't do math apparently. We could order like toothpaste online, and we moved to Florida. You couldn't find a restaurant menu online. Like forget order online. I was like, oh, it's the dark ages here. But eventually they had to evolve. They had to develop websites and this kind of stuff. I think the thing that's interesting with Clubhouse, though, I think they're a little bit having like they were a new shiny thing, and people are getting over it already. Like I think that's part of it, that it's not picking up so much. I thought it was cool for very niche things, like if other accounting people I know that live in other areas would hop on, or like Profit First, where a bunch of us are trying to get together to do some like a channel or something. But when I would hop into some of those random like business advice, like coaching, whatever, and they would just have whoever is not on the panel asking their stupid question, I was like, I cannot listen to this. It's where the lack of editing and it being all live produced, sometimes not a good thing.
But also, you can't throw Clubhouse on in the background, right? Like you need to be in the app, you need to be engaged, you need to be hitting buttons. Like it's designed for people that are like sitting home on their phone, which if you don't live in California or New York, which I realize is like 20% of the country, but the other 80% aren't living that way anymore.
Yeah. Also, I think the people who spend a lot of time on phones, like the kids these days, no interest in this at all. None. They're like, what's Clubhouse? It's like more of a boomer thing than Facebook even.
To be honest, I don't know what Clubhouse is.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Interestingly enough, though, in the martial arts world and the fitness world, it has gone all Zoom now. And the most interesting thing about it is you can train with some, like, Tai Chi master in China via Zoom. And it's like utterly amazing, which, I mean, it's crazy.
That's part of that evolution, that like forced evolution. You had to embrace it or you were left behind.
That's what the future is going to be, is everything's going to be online, because who knows how many more pandemics we're going to be in before the end of my lifetime with the state of the world. Let's be honest.
Okay. It apparently happens once every 100 years.
Yeah, well, there's arguments. Huh? What else?
About every 4 years, you get a pandemic out of China. The reaction to this was unseen before. But a pandemic's real. Jordan's right. She's going to see this a whole bunch.
And there's other things that happen, right? So I think that being online would be the easiest, right? So I think that every business could prepare for this future, which might look like a failure, but it doesn't have to. And, Bet and I were talking about that the other day with this online vet for Zula. And it was like, okay, like, let's see, how would this play out? Because like you were saying with the gym and stuff, but certain things you have to go in person. So I think it would be a challenge for those businesses to adapt their company to fit the needs of the future, which is find out a way to have a vet visit and figure out the heartworms from the computer screen.
Right. And at some point, somebody will figure out, if I develop a test that's just like a saliva test or a poop test or something that a pet owner could easily obtain, or like a piece of hair or something, and send it to a lab, you might not need it. You might not need that physical interaction. But there's probably some industries where you can't 100% eliminate, like medicine, veterinary, dentistry. I don't know how you're going to do remote dentistry.
We'll be living in
how many designer mask companies did we see pop up in the last 8 months?
Yeah. Necessity, mother of invention, right?
I didn't catch that, but now
I didn't hear him. Yeah.
Oh, how many designer mask companies popped up?
Yeah.
So true. And wasn't that on, what was it? The invention show.
Shark Tank?
Shark Tank. Yeah, it was on Shark Tank that this lady came in and she had these like designer masks with these funny faces. And they were like, this is terrible, bad idea, go away. And it's like, well, this didn't age well. Look at people now, So it's crazy the way times change and how certain inventions.
I made a comment last year when our stage combat group, someone wanted to order masks with our logo. And I was like, we're not going to need these in a couple months. Oh, was I wrong?
Yeah, it's like, I'm not going to buy a mask. That's awful. It's so dumb. And now I have like 100.
Right.
The red carpet. I mean, they're wearing designer gowns with a matching design mask. The whole new industry. But what I found interesting, like even in the fitness world, you see that new Pelon thing where you have the bicycle on the screen and they have like it's like amazing.
What about the mirror?
Or the mirror, which
yeah, that thing looks cool.
But
there are weights that are like you can just change the buttons and it
do a different exercise routine. But what I'm finding now in the nutritional industry and the health industry, they have suddenly a plethora of becoming an online coach, whether it's nutrition, wellness. It's like totally amazing. And I guess it's the resiliency of like, well, how do we deal with this situation? Now, out of the book, what I got was the concept of resiliency, which has always been in my mindset, but it's the fact that, you've got to be able to switch on a dime to deal with whatever comes on. So
be very agile.
Yeah, you have
It's
to.
also making us very lazy.
Yes, that's the
Because
only.
if you were going to take a class somewhere, whether it's a physical class or an intellectual class, and you had to get up and get in your car and drive over there and park and go in and blah blah blah, and if you were in charge and you had to set up and be there early, now you don't do anything. Now you can just say, okay, we're going to have a wine and cheese. Oh, okay, have your wine and cheese ready. What kind did you bring this time? And then you get on Zoom and talk about it.
Well, I think that was also part of why Clubhouse got a bit of popularity, is how many people want to be like camera ready all the time to be on Zoom, whereas this was like no picture at all. It was only audio.
Oh, really?
Once you have a phone, who cares, right? It just has audio built in. It's part of the capability, or it's a very bad phone. So I think we had that like Zoom fatigue, I guess, of just all the time, everything online. And this was like a little bit of a break where you didn't have to be dressed from the waist up, do your makeup and your hair and whatever.
We have a thing with Friday night and Saturday morning services, since we're conservative, on Zoom, and they made it that if we don't see you on camera, you're not counted.
Oh. That's like the schools. The schools were doing that with the kids. Like, we won't count your attendance if we don't see you.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, someone got like in trouble at one of these Zoom meetings for work. They were told they need to have their camera on.
Right.
Because it's like, be engaged, be here in this moment with us.
And
Otherwise
depending on what we're doing and health-wise and stuff, sometimes we're on, but we're not on. We just have our name, picture, whatever on.
Yep.
But
it happens a lot.
I think Alex say something. I was waving goodbye. Bye.
Yep. Bye, Alex.
I don't know. One thing I wanted to bring up, I know you want to end soon, but he brought up about procrastination and how procrastination is a failure. And I went, really? I'm like the top procrastinator that I know. I was supposed to be the president of the procrastination club, but I never got around to sending in my paperwork, So, but then I thought, gee, that's because I procrastinated. But I'm such a big procrastinator. And what you had said before about him, like the countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do it. Sometimes when I have to call somebody or make an arrangement for something and I just don't want to do it, I go, okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do it. So there are things in the book that are helpful, at least.
Yeah. Absolutely. I don't know. I would read other stuff by him. I liked his writing, even if it got repetitive. I thought he had a good message overall. I'm actually going to make my children read this, starting with Brock, because I think if you can figure out some of what he's talking about early on, and you don't have to undo bad thought patterns and internal dialogue and that kind of stuff when you're young.
Yeah.
Just think of how much more successful you are, because you're okay with the failures. You're okay with the taking risks. Actually, the one who really needs to read it is Debbie, but it might be a little over her head.
But then it's bad because you're like, you didn't clean your room. And he's like, Mom, I'm failing forward. It's all good.
I'll do better next time.
You know what? There's always a smart aleck. And Alex not on there, but not meaning him, but there's always a smart one. They always learn how to do things. But I think it's really important to know that, like, if people are teasing you and stuff, that you don't have to listen to that. That it's okay if you shut them down, that they're the ones that are wrong. It's not a mistake to not listen to them, but I think
Totally.
It's read it, it's good, but I think they have to read it with a parent, or, a caretaker, a parent, somebody who can, they can have discussions about each chapter with, so they know how to apply it.
Yeah, I agree. All right. I think we beat this to death. It was a great book for discussing, though, because there was so much in there that you could go down so many tangents. April Book Club is a tiny, tiny short book. No one has any excuse to not get through it. I actually read it before, so I'm cheating a little, but it's because it's in the middle of tax season. It's called The Go-Giver by Bob Berg. It's like The Go-Giver. It's kind of a parable-ish type illustrative story to make his point. But it's a short book. It's got a fantastic message. It probably won't be a super long book club meeting, but it's a great little book.
Do you know if it's available on Kindle?
I'm sure it's not that new. Sure, you can find it.
Bob Burke.
Bob Burke?
Bob
Berg.
Berg, B-U-R-G. Berg.
Berg.
Bob Berg. I think he lives in Florida too.
Ooh. Maybe you can get him to come on.
I think I'd have to have more people.
That's what we want. Tell him that you'll be glad to have him on if he brings 10 people with him. And 2 of them have to be looking for a new account.
Yeah. Please bring a prospect or 5 with you. All right. And with that, I'm going to stop the Facebook stream. Thank you, everybody.
Jordan, so good, nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you guys.
Thank
See you next month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if not before. Okay. Bye.